Welcome to the debate. I am so glad you could join us today. Now, this is going to be a little different from our usual high-speed debates. We're partnering with Fluent Mindcast to create a space that's, well, calmer, cozier. It's specifically designed as a supportive listening guide for learners of English. So if you're listening to practice, please just relax. Take a deep breath. We're going to speak clearly, and we're going to really explore the fascinating mechanics of human connection.
It's a pleasure to be here. And while the atmosphere is cozy, as you say, the topic we're tackling it's surprisingly complex. We aren't just talking about words. We're dissecting the invisible architecture of social interaction.
Exactly. We're diving into the hidden rules of polite English. And I don't mean the rules you find in a textbook. We all learn to say please and thank you and excuse me, but the source material we're looking at today suggests that true politeness isn't really about those words at all. It's about tone, it's about intention, it's about the art of, softening the language to make it feel less rigid.
And that, I think, brings us to the central question for today. Is this soft language primarily a vehicle for emotional warmth and genuine connection, which I suspect is your view, or is it actually a sophisticated and maybe somewhat rigid strategic code that's designed to manage social dynamics?
That is the question, isn't it? I believe at its core, this language is about heart. It's about making the other person feel seen, feel safe. But I know you see it through a more utilitarian lens.
I see it through the lens of, let's say, social survival. But before we get into the weeds, let's just lay out our positions clearly for everyone listening. Why don't you start us off?
Gladly. My perspective is that polite English, the kind native speakers use when they're relaxed, is fundamentally about human connection. When we look at the source material, native speakers consistently prioritize the feeling of a sentence over sheer efficiency. They'll often make a sentence twice as long, adding words that seem, unnecessary, just to make sure the listener feels safe. When I analyze these patterns, the soft openings, the hesitations, I don't see a secret code. I see an olive branch. I see a speaker making a real effort to remove any aggression from their voice, to build a relationship. It's just kindness, really, woven right into the syntax.
It's a lovely image, and I don't deny the effect is often pleasant. I do, however, have to take the opposing view. I would argue that polite English is primarily a form of protection. It's a tool for strategic nuance. I mean, when we really analyze the mechanics, this softness relies heavily on ambiguity, on what is not said. It creates a buffer zone. It lets a speaker test the waters without committing to a direct command. If a learner thinks this is all just about being nice, they're going to miss the entire point. It's about creating social balance, avoiding conflict, and even maintaining hierarchy. If you don't get the utility of that ambiguity, you could find yourself in some very awkward situations, especially at work. It's not just kindness, it's risk management.
Risk management. You make a simple conversation sound like a corporate negotiation. But okay, let's test that theory with our first big topic from the material, the art of indirectness. The text gives a classic example. A speaker wants the window closed, but instead of saying, close the window, they say, it's a bit cold in here, isn't it?
Right. This is the quintessential example, and I have to say, for a learner, that can be infuriatingly opaque.
But is it really? I see that as an invitation. When I say it's a bit cold, I'm sharing an experience. I'm making myself a little vulnerable. I'm saying I'm uncomfortable, and I'm trusting that you care enough to, help fix it. It turns a command, which creates a kind of top-down dynamic, into a shared moment of empathy. We're just two people solving a problem together.
I think you're projecting a lot of romance onto what is essentially a safety mechanism. Let's look at it analytically. Close the window is an imperative. It's a direct order. If I give you an order, I risk two things. One, I risk you saying no, which damages my authority. Or two, I risk you thinking I'm rude, which damages my reputation.
Exactly. It avoids the damage. That's the whole point.
But at the cost of clarity. If a learner takes that sentence literally, they just hear a fact. The temperature is low. They might just reply, yes, it is, and then keep on working. That isn't a failure of empathy on their part, it's a failure of decoding the message. The speaker used indirectness to protect their own ego. If you ignore my hint, I can just pretend I never asked in the first place. It gives the speaker an escape route.
I see the value of the escape route, yes. But just imagine the alternative. A world where everyone speaks in direct commands. Pass the salt, move your chair, send me that email. It would be incredibly abrasive. That ambiguity you call a safety mechanism is what makes the air in the room breathable.
I think we can agree on this, though. For the listener, our audience today, the why matters less than the how. Whether it's kindness or strategy, the key takeaway is that in English, a statement of fact about a problem is often a request for a solution.
Yes, exactly. If someone mentions a problem near you, you can probably assume they're hoping you might help fix it. It's a subtle dance, but once you hear the music, it is quite beautiful.
Which brings us to the next layer of, well, padding. The text calls them soft openings. These are the phrases that, to be honest, bloat the beginning of sentences. Things like, I was wondering if, do you mind if, would it be okay to?
I have to object to the word bloat. These phrases are the cushion.
From a pure information theory standpoint, there's zero content phrases. I was wondering if you could help me contains the exact same request as help me. The first few seconds of the sentence are just noise.
No, they are not noise. They're emotional content. This is such a crucial distinction for our listeners. When I use a phrase like, I was wondering if, look at the grammar. I'm using the past continuous tense. I was wondering.
Which is illogical. You are currently wondering. You're standing right there.
But by putting it in the past, I'm creating distance. I'm stepping back. I'm suggesting that the thought happened a moment ago and I'm not forcefully pushing it on you right now. It just lowers the immediacy. It tells the listener, I respect your time. I know you're busy. I am approaching you carefully. The text even notes that native speakers use these with close friends. That proves it isn't just about formality or hierarchy. It's about comfort.
That is a compelling linguistic argument, the idea of distance creating safety. But have you considered the cognitive load this places on a learner? A learner wants to be efficient. To construct, I was wondering if you could, it requires manipulating modals and tense and word order. It's a high-effort move.
It is, but the return on that investment is massive.
Perhaps, but I'd argue we use this machinery not just to be nice, but to grease the wheels of negotiation. These soft openers, they're technically negative politeness strategies. They emphasize the listener's right to say no. Do you mind if literally asks about your objection, not your compliance? By framing it that way, I'm formally acknowledging your autonomy. It makes it much harder for you to see me as a threat. It's like a disarmament treaty signed before the request is even made.
A disarmament treaty. You really do stick to the warfare metaphors, don't you? But I think our listeners can try this right now. Just listen to the rhythm. I'll give you the rock and then the wave. The rock. Check this report. The wave. Do you think you could take a look at this report?
The wave is certainly less likely to create resentment.
Exactly. And that flows right into the most dangerous part of a conversation, disagreement. This is where learners often struggle the most because the textbook version is just so binary.
Right. The textbook says, I disagree, or you are wrong.
Yeah, but if you say I disagree in a casual meeting, the temperature in the room just drops 10 degrees. It feels like a slap.
It signals confrontation. It draws a line in the sand.
So the source material tells us that disagreement in English is wrapped in kindness. We use the yes-but structure. I see your point, but, or that's a really interesting idea, though I wonder if.
Okay, this is where I struggle with the sincerity argument. The text mentions a specific habit. English speakers will often compliment an idea right before they destroy it. That's a fantastic proposal, really creative. However, it won't work. To me, this is the ultimate strategic maneuver. It's what we might call the compliment sandwich.
Why is it strategic? Why can't it be genuine?
Because it functions to preserve the speaker's status. If I just crush your idea, I look like a bully. But if I compliment it first, I look like a thoughtful, balanced leader who's considered all the angles. It lets me assert my dominance, my ability to judge your idea while still appearing benevolent. It's social balance, as the text says.
I think you're being a bit too cynical. When I say, I see your point, I'm validating you as a person. I'm telling you, you are not crazy. Your logic makes sense. I just happen to have a different perspective. It turns the disagreement into a collaboration. We're looking at the problem together instead of fighting each other.
That's a fair distinction. Attacking the problem versus attacking the person. And for a learner, adopting that strategy, even if it feels a little artificial at first, is crucial.
Why?
Because it buys you time, and it buys you goodwill. If you start with, "You're wrong," the other person just stops listening. Their defenses go up. But if you start with, "That's interesting," they stay open. It's a tactical advantage.
We can agree on the result then. It keeps the door open. And speaking of keeping doors open, we have to talk about the word sorry.
Ah, the reflex. The word we say when someone bumps into us.
The text points out that sorry is so rarely an admission of guilt in these contexts. It's not about being wrong.
This is a huge point of confusion. In many cultures, you only apologize if you've actually done something wrong. In English, sorry is just, it's social glue.
Exactly. Imagine you need to ask a stranger a question. You say, "Sorry, is this seat taken?" You haven't done anything wrong. You're just asking permission. But you use sorry to acknowledge you're entering their personal space. It's a kind of pre-apology for the disturbance. It's empathy.
I see it more as a traffic signal, a flashing yellow light. It just signals caution, interaction occurring. But let's look at the hesitation words that usually go with this style. The text highlights words like maybe, kind of, sort of, a bit, like it's sort of expensive, or I kind of think we should go.
I love these words. They take the sharp edges off of everything. They make the world feel a little softer.
But they also ruin precision. A learner feels this pressure to be direct and clear. They want to say, "The price is too high." But a native speaker says, "It's a bit steep." Why? Because being absolute is risky. If I say it is expensive, I'm stating a universal fact. You might disagree. Then we have a conflict. But if I say it's a bit expensive, I'm just stating my subjective opinion. It leaves room for you to have a different one. It lowers the social stakes.
That's true, but I would frame it differently. I think those words, maybe, kind of, they allow space for uncertainty. They make the speaker sound humble. If everyone speaks in absolutes, the energy is very aggressive. It feels like a lecture. But when we use these softeners, we are signaling that our mind is open. I think this might be the answer, invites you to contribute. This is the answer, just shuts you out.
It shifts the dynamic from a lecture to a dialogue.
Yes, and surprisingly, the text notes that using these uncertain words actually makes a learner sound more fluent.
That's the paradox, isn't it? Sounding 100% confident and precise can often make you sound foreign. Sounding slightly unsure and hesitant actually makes you sound more like a native speaker.
Because it sounds human. It sounds like you're thinking in real time, not just reciting a script.
Or because it sounds safe. We tend to trust people who don't claim to know everything.
Precisely. And that brings us to the final hurdle, the escape, the long goodbye.
The inability to simply leave a room.
It's not an inability. The text discusses the rituals of leaving. You can't just say goodbye and hang up the phone. That signals anger.
It signals a rupture, yeah. Linguistically, we have to use what are called pre-closing sequences. Right then, or anyway, I should let you go, or it was great catching up. We just layer these signals on top of each other.
And we repeat them. We might say bye 3 or 4 times. Okay, take care. Yep, bye. Bye now.
From a strategic view, this is fascinating. The text says this repetition is a verification process. We're checking that the interaction was successful. If I leave too quickly, you might think I'm bored or offended. By dragging out the goodbye, I am performing a little ritual that says I'm leaving because I have to, not because I want to.
It's warmth. It's making sure the last flavor in your mouth is sweet. It's the linguistic equivalent of a lingering hug. And it's so deeply connected to tone. The text argues that all of this, the softeners, the indirectness, it all relies on tone.
Tone is the carrier signal. You can say, "Can you help me?" with a flat falling intonation and it sounds like a demand. "Can you help me?" But you can say it with a rising, soft intonation and it sounds like a plea. "Can you help me?"
And that is exactly why we encourage our listeners to just relax and listen. You can't memorize tone from a book. You have to absorb it. You have to let the music of the language just settle in your mind.
Right, and this is the one area where strategy fails. You can't fake tone easily. It requires a genuine understanding of the social context. If you use the right words like "I was wondering," but your tone is aggressive, you just sound sarcastic. And sarcasm is a whole other episode.
Indeed it is. So, we may never agree on the source of these rules, whether it's your strategic code or my empathetic bridge, but I think we do agree on the result.
We do. The result is smoothness.
Let's summarize where we've landed for our listeners. Polite English isn't just a list of words to memorize, it's an attitude.
It is a toolkit. We've discussed indirectness, turning orders into observations. We've talked about soft openers, using grammar to create safety.
We talked about the compliment sandwich in disagreement, validating the person before you challenge their idea. And we talked about the power of hesitation, how words like maybe and sort of actually build trust.
And finally, the long goodbye. Those pre-closing rituals that ensure the relationship survives the end of the conversation.
And to our listeners, I know this might feel like a lot to take in, but you really don't need to master all of this today.
No, perfection is not the goal here. In fact, native speakers are remarkably forgiving. If they see you trying to be polite, if they hear a maybe or a sorry in there, they appreciate the effort, they recognize the code.
That is such an important message. Connection is the goal. If you make the effort to soften your language, people will feel it, even if your grammar isn't perfect.
My advice would be to just pick one thing we discussed. Maybe the phrase, "I was wondering if," or the habit of saying right then before you leave a conversation. Try it out. See if it changes the energy in the room.
A wonderful suggestion. There is so much more to explore in this, but for now, we'll leave you to reflect on these hidden rules. Thank you for spending this time with us, and with Fluent Mindcast, we hope this has helped you feel a little more confident in the soft side of English.
Indeed. Listen closely, speak softly, and good luck.
Until next time.
Goodbye.